Assalamu alaikum, I'm Abdul Haseeb. Today we're moving towards the last episode, the last part of speaking in public. Your first impressions are important, so are your final impressions. This is why your speeches, your words, they need to be strong, they need to be heavy. That is why you need strong introductions, you need strong conclusions. And when I mean this, you have actually to achieve only 4 objectives for a strong introduction. Number 1, establish your credibility and goodwill. Number 2, gain the attention and trust of the audience. That could be done by startling the audience right at the start or questioning them to arouse their curiosity. You need to purchase their eyes, their focus, everything onto you. That can be done. You just have to create an environment of curiosity, one that intrigues them. Well, that was something which would help us create a strong introduction, but do not forget to mention the topic of your speech. That's number 3, objective. So the last objective, when we move towards it, it isn't that difficult. Use of strong language. Strong and bold language, specific language. When your introduction is too general, too vague, who would want to hear the next words? Who would want to continue? Who would want to just sit there and listen? No one would. Because it's something that didn't get their interest. It's something that didn't light a bulb inside them. It's something that didn't raise any question in their mind. It isn't anything at all. So obviously that was a strong first impression, but when you're waving goodbyes, you also need to keep this in mind, that you were here for a purpose, to convey a message. And the first objective for a very strong conclusion is to let the audience know that you're ending. You're ending. That's it. Goodbye. And that is obviously done by the manner of your delivery, by how your words are now coming out, by how you intend to let them know that this is the end, and have you been satisfied? What's your part in it? But the second is the most important, that you reinforce your central idea even when you're ending, even when you're waving goodbyes. You reinforce your central idea. That can be done, when you devise a very forceful and vivid conclusion, being creative. You could, summarize the speech. You could use quotation. You can use a dramatic statement, or you can even, use the figurative language in the end. That can be done. The personification, the metaphors, the similes. That can reinforce your idea. Although you were very, reliable about your strong first impressions and your last impressions, but there is something in the middle. You do not just say hello and goodbye. There's always something that plans what you have to say, what your impressions are. Those are your outlines. And effective outlines are essential for effective speeches. And it goes like this. So what are these outlines? These are something that what you have to say, but something that isn't that vague, something that has a specific purpose. These are your outlines. And when you're making an outline, when you're outlining your speech, you do not need to forget this, that you have to take the introduction with you. Something that you have labeled, something you've told about. In the outline, you label your introduction, your body, your conclusion. And then you add the transitions, you add the internal summaries, you add the internal previews. An outline is all about previewing your body, your speech. And if it isn't strong, if it isn't, coherent, because what outline is, it makes you realize, it makes you sure that is your structure of the speech coherent? Is your ideas, your related ideas, are they together? It helps you to go from one idea to another in a flow. And that's all required. We have to have an ascending order, that what we have to convey, the next moment. And that is your outline. And effective outlines are required for the best impressions. Either they're the final or they're the first impressions. But your words also have power. And good speakers, they know that language has a lot of power. They're very careful with their language, with the use of their language. They know how it works and how they need to make it work for them. Words have power. Words are heavy. They're heavy, they're light, they're persuasive, they're emotional. There are different kinds of words for different kinds of people. And using language accurately, precisely, engagingly, interestingly, intriguingly, questioning, that's part of making your speech the best. That's part of it. The other part about the language is that obviously your language has words. And words, they have power, they have meanings. There are different kinds of meanings for even a singular word, but there are two kinds of meanings in common. Either words are denotative or they're connotative. Now, to be very short and precise, engagingly denotative means literal, accurate, objective. On the very other hand, on a very contrast, the connotative words, they mean variable, figurative, more variable, more subjective. That's a totally different part. So there's always this thing that people use a mixture of these meanings. They take both with them. From their first impression to their last impression, these are with them. They take them along. Obviously, it's vital for everyone to use language correctly and appropriately. Appropriately using the language is very vital. Because if your audience are offended or if they're feeling that the language isn't adapting to their interests, to their beliefs, they aren't listening. They are not. Well, your speech making isn't all about the words, it's also about the visual aids. If you're focusing too much on the words, if the words are troubling you, there are always many kinds of visual aids. Now, I would suggest diagrams and sketches because there is something that you can draw yourself. You can use the pencil to express what you want to deliver, what you want to communicate, what you want to convey. That illustrates the exact point. It precisely and concisely determines, it aims at the very point you want. The very point you want others to know. The very point. Now, if you see the different types of visual aids, you could use the graphs. Now, graphs are very valuable when you're dealing with information that's dealing in numbers. Then we have, the charts. They cover up large blocks of information, large blocks of them. And that's easy. There are different types. You can use the statistical polygon, you can use the histogram, you can use the bar graph, you can use the pie charts. There are videos, you can use videos, although they have to be carefully edited and integrated into the speech. But those are also visual aids. Your videos, your visual aids should also relate, they should also keep the structure of the speech coherent, related. If something goes out of the way, that means a whole other thing. You then have to explain the other things also. There has to be a new picture given as well. If things are just left unexplained, your listener has paused. Your audience has paused there. Even when you're conveying the next message, their mind is still there, which wasn't explained. Their mind is trying to interpret that what could it have meant. Now, you could use visual aids, you could use good language, But speech delivery, it's all about non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication. Now, actually, basically, it's based upon your voice, your body, that is expressed by your words. Your message that your voice, that your body is conveying, is only expressed by mere words, bunch of words. It's your voice, it's your body that's doing the work. And we always need an effective voice and an effective body. And I do not mean good muscles and abs and a very good jawline. That is something that I do not mean. If we start with the first part, with this first stage, that is the voice, we need to make sure that the voice, it itself is a mixture of different elements. The volume, the pitch, the rate is the speed, obviously, at which you talk. The volume is the loudness at which you talk, and the pitch is the highness or lowness. Then we have the pauses. We also have the pauses. And pauses, I do mean, pauses are pauses, but they're obviously those small, very tiniest of the fraction stop time that we take. And at sometimes, when carefully we pause, it could add a punch to our speech. It can. And I'm certainly not talking about the or sort of pauses. Not at all. Those are the pauses that let the others think about the very bold words, the very bold message that you have just conveyed. That pause lets the others take that message to the mind, to the heart. Both of them. Those pauses add the punch to the speech. And obviously your voice, your dialect is also important. But sometimes, if you are using a very heavy dialect that the others don't share, that's inappropriate. A heavy dialect isn't needed. It's not at all needed. A very formal, normal way of pronouncing the words is all we need. Because your central idea should be in your mind, not the dialect. Obviously, your voice isn't everything. People have eyes, so they have to see your body. Your body language, your gestures, your facial expressions, your emotions that you reveal, they play a very important part to the size of the audience that listen. A very important part. Now, obviously, your appearance has to be good. I'm not talking about your clothes or anything. I'm talking about the emotions, about the expressions, about the gestures you use. You have to adapt your gestures, your body movement, your body language, your expressions that intrigue the audience, that intrigue the listeners, that help them listen more out of it, even if it isn't. It helps them because they're all about it. If there's emotion, your facial expressions should express it. If you're just standing there dull and just speaking and speaking, there's no emotion, there's no gesture, there's no expression, expect a similar feedback. A dull feedback. Expect that. Now, obviously, when your listeners are speaking, they only agree with you, they only rely on your ideas of one or more of 4 reasons. Now, the first one is that they perceive of you as a person of high credibility. Secondly, they are in bondage with the strong evidence that you've provided. They're convinced by it. Then, thirdly, you win them over by your reasoning. Either this could be also reason. And then, obviously, fourthly, what is that? It is again your credibility. Now, all of these, when credibility has taken half of the part, it's obviously the most important. It may be affected by different factors. There are different factors affecting credibility, but there are only 2 most important ones. that defines it. Competence, your character.